Thanks for joining us. We're super excited to have you here. I've been watching the participant count roll up, so I was giving it a moment for everybody to sit in and settle in. My name is Steve Nimmo. I am co-founder of Z-Cares Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization who's dedicated to standing up to anxiety, as it says behind me. Z-Cares was inspired by my son, Zachary, who unfortunately we lost 2 years ago to his struggles with mental health. And we have dedicated our lives now to standing up in his name to end the stigma and help create awareness and help everyone understand mental health and understand that it's normal, it's treatable, and hopefully you learn that in watching the film. I am really excited about our panel tonight. I've done a lot of these and super excited about the group we have assembled with you today. So I want to invite my panel to join me. And what I'm going to do is kind of go through them one by one, and I'm going to ask each of them short and brief and to the point. I'm going to ask each of them to A, introduce themselves, and B, I want them to talk about what part of the film really spoke to them, what in the film really stood out in their mind. And there's so many parts in my mind, I could change my mind every time I talk about it. And who better to start with than the executive producer herself, Karen Gornick.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I just have to say that these are my favorite screenings, are the ones put on by the Nimmo family, obviously because it's so personal to them, but also just the incredible work that they're doing out in communities, really helping people understand how treatable anxiety disorders are, that we don't need to suffer. So my name is Karen Gornick, and I'm one of the producers of the film. Sheila, Andreen, and I made this together because we're filmmakers, but more importantly, moms. And I really felt that this film was important to make to help understand anxiety and why it happens in our brains and what we can do about it, because I was really struggling with my own son, who was a teen at the time, and I felt like it was a race against time to get help before I lost him. And it really, I learned just how much help and hope there is. So for me, what resonates the most in the film, as you probably have seen, I was actually in the film, I was trying to find a parent to interview about this. I decided just to be vulnerable myself. And that was, I learned just how much, how important it is to look at your own anxiety as a parent if your kids are struggling. And that was probably the single most important thing that I really wanted to get across in the film is anxiety disorders are treatable. And if you're a parent struggling, look at your own anxiety levels first.
Great, thank you, Karen. That's I couldn't agree more. Both Karen and Sheila sit on the Z-Cares board of directors, and we couldn't be happier to have them. And the input and insight that they provide are amazing. So thank you for that. So let's move to Nicole.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Brown, Elk Grove Unified School District counselor. I've been in the profession since the 1990s and before. And did you want me to say what struck me with the film?
Please.
What struck me the most was the young people, the youngsters who really felt the pressure to be perfect. Lots of pressure to always know what's supposed to happen and how things were supposed to work and to always have the answers and to look the part. It's a lot of anxiety and a lot of unrealistic expectations that I think our society as a whole is putting on a lot of people.
Great, thank you. All right, so Jacqueline.
Hi, yes, Jacqueline Rodriguez. I serve as a coordinator at Sac City Unified School District of Student Support Services. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I've worked in the field of mental health for over 20 years in the foster care system and community-based mental health, as well as now in the school setting. So also very honored to be included in this panel, not just because professionally I'm very passionate about the subject, but just personally having had my own lived experience in supporting my own family members with mental health. So that's a little bit about me. What really resonated for me throughout the film is the feeling of hope. As Karen said, that there is help and it is treatable. And the power of connection. I loved how every youth, they each had their own individual experience of anxiety, But one thing they all had in common was that one thing that really helped them was finding that person that they could connect and share their experience with. And so I just think that's really powerful for us to remember that power of connection.
Thank you. On to Jennifer.
Hi there, Jennifer Mullen, and I'm a manager of prevention and wellness for Davis Joint Unified School District. And I actually, Karen, I didn't know that was you in the film, but I was going to comment on the fact that I have a 7-year-old who also was just sort of born into the world very sensitive and a giant heart. And I know you talked about like your son being very sensitive. And so I talk with her a lot about it, what she's feeling being temporary. I appreciated in the film that you talk about, you know, that it gets better, like Jacqueline said, that this is temporary, that they can, she can experience these emotions and really strong feelings, but move through them and come out the other side. I really appreciated that. And I saw how many kids talked about, you know, I've struggled with this my whole life, or this has been my experience my whole life. So it really is a life journey. It's something that we have to help them learn to work through and know that there are also like superpowers on the other side of it. Their ability to really be intuitive and in tune with people, and that sensitive heart is on the other side of really being a deep feeler too and experiencing that anxiety. So
Great, thank you. Thank you. Laura.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura, and first I want to thank Steve and ZCares Foundation for this great opportunity for me to join a great panel to talk to you about mental health. And as I'm sitting here thinking about how I want to introduce myself, give you my name, my background, what I do at work, but it wouldn't really tell you why I personally am on this panel tonight. So to share with you who I am a mother, I am a wife, a daughter, a sister, a colleague, and a friend. And to those people, I have heard them refer to me, or I am known as the warrior, the Energizer Bunny, the cheerleader, the go-getter, the overachiever, the one that never quits. And I'll explain to you why I chose to introduce myself to you that way a little later. But to share with you my impression of the film, it was a great opportunity for IndieFlix to share a powerful and positive message that mental health should not be feared. It should be embraced and talked about, because it's an opportunity for all of us to destigmatize the negativity around mental health. Instead of thinking about the negativity, we should bring it into light and talk about it so that there's not so much darkness that surrounds this topic. And so I think the film was done very well to capture a lot of what different people are facing, and the impact it has on people realizing that it can happen to anyone. And that was the biggest impression for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a student at Dialectical Valley College. I also serve on the ZCares Youth Board. And what I really took away from the film was that we see Michael Phelps in here, and he shares his experience with that. And that really just kind of emphasizes that mental health doesn't discriminate, and it affects anybody and everybody. And you think that these celebrities and Michael Phelps, with all his gold medals, he should feel so happy and have everything in the world, but that's not the case. And I think that's so real to us, and it's like none of the external things that happen around us really play a part in our happiness. It happens within, and I think that's something that we should all remember, and that, like Laura said, it happens to everybody, and we try to normalize it as best as we can.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Samantha.
Hi everyone, my name is Sam Nimmo. I am co-founder of ZCares, also the creator of Sit Down with Sam and the Youth Board. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I'm actually a student studying psychology and business down in SoCal. And, you know, I was thinking about it, and one of the parts of the film that's probably the most impactful to me is also Michael Phelps, like Katie said. But I was thinking about it today, and I actually had the opportunity to interview Andy from the film. And just seeing his journey and, you know, the person that he's become today has been so inspiring to me. And it's really just, it's a message of hope, really. And that's really what I find from this film. And I'm so happy to be working with Karen and Sheila and being able to bring this film to you guys tonight. So I hope you enjoy the panel, and I hope you also enjoy the film.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'm really excited about this panel. As you can see, there's a wide variety of knowledge and experience here, and yeah, the Katie and Samantha you just heard from, they're our spearheading our what we call our youth board, which I think makes ZCares very unique, and all of our youth board is under the age of 22, and they really keep us honest, because we're supporting youth mental health. And who better to help us in that space than the youth themselves? So you're going to hear some amazing stories from the two of these girls tonight, and they inspire me to keep moving. They're pretty cool. I did want to take a chance to talk about my favorite part of the film, and Karen knows my story super well, and I had a chance to meet, just as Samantha met Andy, I had a chance to meet these two. There's two people, Jim and Sarah, in the film. And what resonated with me with the film, and we saw this film just 2 weeks before we lost Zachary, and they resonated with me back then. And that was when Jim acknowledged Sarah's mental health, their relationship bonded. And I think as parents, we can take a message there that acknowledging what they're going through is real, acknowledging that we don't need to fix them, that we just need to be there for them is really, really powerful. And if you had a chance to meet Jim and Sarah today, they have a really cool relationship, and it's really neat to be around them. So that story was just important to me, because it taught me immediately to acknowledge what Zachary was going through, and I think it really helped us have strong conversations about what he was struggling with. So let's get started. We've got a lot to get through, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time here this evening. So Karen, you had a unique opportunity when you made this film to talk to some pretty amazing people with a lot of knowledge. And I know we could talk about this probably for the rest of the time easily, but can you talk a little bit about sort of what's going on with anxiety, right? From a brain science perspective. I don't want to get too medical and technical here, but just from a standpoint of, what's going on with anxiety?
So do you mean like in our brains, or do you mean like in these times, or both?
Oh, a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, it's just fascinating, both personally and professionally, on this journey with my son to figure out what exactly is going on in the brain. And I think one of the most fascinating things was when I ended up taking him to this therapy that where he could actually see what his brain looks like using a scan when he's under intense stress. And then doing a meditation. At that time he was using, I think it was the Sam Harris app, that would calm his mind. And then he could look and see what his amygdala looked like and how his brain activity was different. And so understanding there is a direct correlation between these skills that we talk about in the film, these things to try to reduce that anxiety, the breathing alone, how it can get you out of your amygdala and into your prefrontal cortex. Something else that I thought was fascinating in talking to the neuroscientists and doctors and therapists was that when we're in something like a panic attack, that you almost can't rationally think your way out of it, right? You're in your amygdala. And so how important it is to distract the person that's going through that. That was really helpful too. So I think, something that our society, anxiety was the #1 mental health concern or complaint in the US before the pandemic. And now with the pandemic, 98% of people feel at least some sort of grief, loss, anxiety, or uncertainty. And so we are in a situation right now where we are forced to really have to look at this mental health crisis that we've been headed for already. And we actually have a chance now, I think, to mitigate that with these tips and tools and learning resilience, and that anxiety is treatable and we do not need to be a victim to it. So that, in a nutshell, is what I think I really want to share about.
Yeah,
that.
no, Great, thank you. And that's, I think, and you can see the tagline kind of behind my back was "Let's talk about it." And I think that is one of the little tricks of getting out of our amygdala and into, sort of our logical brain, is just to simply talk about it. And if people to take away nothing else tonight, talking about mental health is super healthy.
Steve, I want to say one more thing too, because I just noticed that in the Q&A, somebody was asking, is this just in the United States? And actually it's a human condition, right? And since we put out the film, we didn't know where it would resonate. Well, it had ended up, now it's in over 60 countries and in 8 different languages around the world, because people are dealing with this everywhere. So that's just something I want to add that as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Nicole, what are some of the warning signs parents can really look for? I mean, when you're having conversations with teens, what are some of the things that you might be looking for? And kind of to extend that, is it different during the pandemic, or are the warning signs the same?
I think starting with the pandemic, because that's so relevant to where we are right now, the pandemic adds another layer. It's not different, it may be intensified, and there may be more stressors, or our ability to handle stressors changes, especially in the middle of a pandemic when everyone is already uncertain and not sure how to proceed, and everything is new, and we're being forced to learn new skills. The warning signs we look for in teenagers, school-age children, especially middle school or even late elementary, is a big sudden change in grades. And usually that means that grades are going down, but a declining in grades, or just grades over time that just are not able to pull up no matter what kind of supports are there. There's also social changes with maybe who the student or who the child wants to hang out with or associate with. And that could be like a drastic change, a big change. Teenager years, there's a lot of change in adolescence and their friendships, but mood changes, severe mood swings, changes in eating habits, changes in sleeping habits, and excessive worry, where the worry interferes with their ability to get through their day, or to get through their studies, or even to get through a Zoom meeting. Panic attacks, anxiety attacks, where there's physical signs and symptoms of stress and worry that, as somebody said earlier, that you cannot talk yourself out of no matter what you say.
No, thank you. And I appreciate using the word excessive too, because it's, I know many of us on the panel here are mental health first aid trained, and that's one of the words that comes out, is that excessive piece. And I think that's really important. Thank you. So moving on over to Jacqueline, we've talked a lot about social media being a contributor to mental health. Can you talk a little bit about that, and also other contributors such as school and workplace and things like that of contributing to our mental health?
Yeah. I definitely think the pressure that social media can put on our young people can contribute to mental health, the seeking and reinforcement that we're constantly seeking, because it just kind of plays into that. The other thing that we might be having anxiety about, right? About like being accepted, the pressure to like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like excel, like the pressure. So I think it kind of bleeds into the other things that can contribute to us feeling anxiety and other mental health issues about, the pressure. It was mentioned earlier, Nicole mentioned it, the pressure to be perfect, like get good grades, get into college, get A's, also like be accepted by our friends and our family, not let people down. And then fear of judgment. And so then there's a lot of body images and issues that come up with that. So I think things in our work life and our home life can also impact that as well. And I think we're seeing that even more during the pandemic with just all the social isolation. We're losing connection with family and friends that we can't normally go out and see. And then there's also just the fear and anxiety of either getting sick or worried about our family members or friends who are sick. And so, as was mentioned earlier, just the grief, loss, and isolation that we're all experiencing. I think all of those things contribute to mental health issues that we might be struggling with. But I also want to say that I also think social media isn't all bad. So when we're talking about that, it's also, especially right now when we are supposed to be physically distancing, it's actually the way we can stay connected to people. Right now we're hosting this through a virtual platform, right? And we promoted it through social media. So I think that it's really about learning how to manage those tools and how we manage our social media and start to look for those warning signs when maybe it's becoming a problem and not part of the solution. So I think just kind of keeping all things in mind, like, is it a strategy or is it part of the problem? So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying it's not all bad, because there are positives, and I think you pointed out a couple of them right there. So thank you for that. So I'm going to move over to Samantha, our fellow co-founder. And not too long ago, Samantha was in college, or in high school. She is in college, and went through a lot of the stress that we know our kids are going through right now, of the stress of, am I going to get into the right college? Am I with the right friends? How am I doing in my sports and that type of thing? Can you talk a little bit about the stress of making your way through high school and preparing kind of for the next stage in your life, and where can parents help in that path?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you know, if anyone didn't know, he's my dad. So, as you know, like really all of high school, I worried about what I was going to do. I was really stressed out about that. And as I've kind of, made it into like college and like kind of like have a idea of what I want to do, I look back and there really wasn't a need for me to worry at that time. Like I had so much time. You don't have to figure out what you're doing right away, right after college. Even like, especially your high school year, that is such a stressful year. Like you have to, try to almost be like perfect, like quote unquote, but obviously there's no perfect person. So, but I feel like every high schooler has that mentality in their brain. They have to, be the best at their sport. They have to be the best at whatever they do. And like, it's very challenging, but as I grown up, I guess I realized that there really wasn't a need for me to have that worry and anxiety on my back all the time. And, my advice for parents is, really listen to your kids, listen to what they're saying, be someone to, try to take that edge off. Cause, sometimes what I've learned is just simply talking about what you're going through really helps take that weight off of your back. So really just be someone there, to support them, listen to them, and, try to like guide them. But, also one more thing that I realize is that, there isn't just a straight path. I feel like so many people think that they have to go to college right after high school. There's so many different options. There is so many different options. You can take a gap year. You don't even have to go to college. You can go to community college. Like you can do something else. Like Katie, for example, she's a baker. You will hear more about that. So I won't like steal her thunder, but yeah, like there's that, there's so many things, and really take your time. That's the only thing I have to say about that. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And it sort of reminds me, the cool thing in what we do now, I get to have a lot of great conversations with adults, with teens, with people of all ages and from all backgrounds, and there's a really common theme I get. And one high school girl summed it up better than anybody else, and the question was, how can parents be more supportive? Her answer was very straightforward. It was, just be there. Know that even though it doesn't always show, we love you, and but just be there for us. Right. And that's something I think that resonated heavily with me, and kind of helps. And as I, try my best to be a good dad with Samantha, is, just let her know that I'm always there. I'm always in her corner. And that's, sort of an important message just to tack on top of Samantha's note there. So moving over to Katie, since Samantha teed her up a little bit, and Katie's got an amazing story. And Katie this is what strength is all about, someone that's being open and honest about their struggles. And, Katie didn't take a traditional path. She had her struggles. So Katie, can you talk about your experiences, with anxiety and depression, and, what worked for you to kind of get through that from a self-care and coping perspective? And finally, and what helped you not feel shame, right? What helped you feel open about having a conversation?
Yeah, my journey began around the end of 8th grade, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I knew I was just kind of feeling off. I had really, really great friends, and I didn't know where my place was. And so that was really challenging. And then as I entered my freshman year, that's when things started to really kind of crumble, and just my life felt like it was breaking apart, and I couldn't get out of bed. I literally felt like I was chained to my bed, and I did not want to get up, and I physically couldn't. I would have panic attacks in the morning, and I would just cry heavily, begging my mom not to send me to school. And there was no quote unquote good reason for it. I just didn't want to. And I wasn't being bullied. I had good grades, but there was just something in me that was like, you need to stay home because you wouldn't be able to survive the day at school. And when I did go to school, I would conjure up these stomach aches so that I could go home. And they were, I guess, anxious stomach aches, which is proven to actually be a thing. When you're anxious, you can get stomach aches and you can get ill. And so it was really, really hard, and I didn't want to go to school anymore. There was just something in me that I couldn't do it. And every day was such a hard battle. And my mom wouldn't let me give up. She said, you have to finish out the year. And so as each month went on, she said, okay, you're this much closer to finishing school, and then we'll find an alternative. And so that was kind of the light. It wasn't really there, but there was like a little shining light that I was like, okay, there's going to be something different. And there was. I ended up going to an independent study school, which I went to school 1 day a week. I met with an advisor one-on-one, and I was able to work at my own pace. I didn't have to be in a classroom with 30 odd kids who most likely didn't want to be there. And it really made me love school again. I started going to a therapist. I went on medication, which isn't for everybody, but it worked really well for me. But more than that, it was therapy that really, really helped as well, just to be able to talk to somebody who helped me with coping and self-care and what that even really looks like, because I had no idea what that was. And it was at the time when I didn't have motivation to do anything. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to get out of bed or do anything. And she was like, you eat 1 apple a day, and even if you don't finish the apple, at least you got something in your system, and at least you're getting a little bit of energy to do something. And so it kind of started with brushing your teeth, making sure you shower, just small things like that you might forget to do when you're in such a depressive rut. And so what I really advocate now is self-care, and I do self-care with Katie with Z Cares. And I've talked to basically everybody on our youth board what we do for self-care, and a lot of it is yoga and being really mindful of yourself. And they like to go outside and bike ride and do things like that. And for me, it's baking. I love to bake. It kind of became a thing that I cope with. And when I'm stressed, I will bake, and I feel so happy. Like Sam said, I am currently at DDC. I took a gap year actually after I graduated high school, and Steve really wanted me to talk about my gap year because I know a lot of kids don't do it because they feel pressured to go straight into college. Thankfully, I had such a supportive mom who was just like, you can take a gap year, you can work. I worked that entire year. I'm still working with the same person. And it really kind of gave me that experience I needed, and to know what I really wanted to do. And that was to bake, just to make myself happy and make other people happy. I love when my baked goods make people smile. It's very self-rewarding, but the whole thing itself it's very therapeutic for me. So that's what I really love. And so that's what I like to do to cope. And that's kind of my story in a nutshell. The main thing I think is just to find something that really makes you happy. For some people, that's riding their bike all the time. That's singing. That's singing for me. I love to sing. So finding what makes you happy is a little bit of a way to help you cope.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. And I can tell you that her baking puts a smile on my face because I had some this past weekend, and it was delicious. She made some wonderful lemon cupcakes for Zachary's birthday, so that was super sweet of her, and they were delicious. Jennifer, so Katie just laid out some very extreme signs of depression that she was dealing with. But can you talk a little bit about how can parents tell the difference between typical teen hormones versus a mental health disorder?
Yeah, I feel like parents are really the experts on their own kids. The baseline of your own child. I know Jim in the movie talked about he had 3 kids, 2 really dealt with transitions and disappointment pretty easily, and 1 did not. I think you kind of know from the beginning how your child behaves, how they've developed. And your adolescent years, your teenage years are a lot about identity. So your anxiety is going to increase anyway, because you're constantly comparing yourself to everyone else around you. And what do I look like? And how do I act? And that in combination with hormones, there could be outbursts of various emotions all at different points of time. But I think the thing to know is really things that have already been mentioned by all of the panel members, which is about functioning. So is the anxiety, whatever it comes from? It could be from hormones. Maybe hormones are raging and causing extreme amounts of anxiety. It doesn't really matter what the root cause is. When you're thinking about what to do about the anxiety, it matters if it's impacting, how it's impacting your student or your child. Are they not sleeping? A lot of the things that Nicole mentioned and that Katie just mentioned, are they not eating? Are they not sleeping? Is it becoming something that's in the way of their functioning? There's various levels of anxiety, and then there's various levels of intervention for anxiety. So are they able to push through it? Could Katie experience all those things and then still go to school and not be so impacted to the point that she was? It sounds like in her case, no. So, but your child and what's happening for them. And the other thing that I liked about the movie has already been mentioned is talk to someone. I think that's really important for parents. So, you in Davis, we're sort of fortunate to have a school counselor at every school site. That's your mental health point of contact. You can call. When I was a school counselor, I had so many parents call and just say, can you please just tell me if this is normal? Talk to parent friends, talk to healthcare providers, talk to your doctor if that feels more comfortable. If there's a nurse at school and that feels, whatever whoever feels you feel most connected to as a parent, talk and find out, answers to your questions. Here's what's going on for my child. Is this normal? What can I do to help them? And, do they need additional help?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was awesome. Back over to Samantha. And if you've got a friend who's struggling, maybe they told you they're struggling, you just know they're struggling. I mean, Jennifer just laid out some areas and things to look for. What are some of the things that, from your perspective, that are important that you could do, that you could say, that you could, sort of help let them know that you're there?
Yeah, my biggest thing that I recommend is simply just talking. If, someone, sits you down and they're telling you kind of what's going through their mind and everything, even if you don't know what they're talking about, you don't experience the same thing, still listen to them and listen to their story. Because at the end of the day, that person being able to tell you that, whether you understand it or not, is so beneficial to them. And if you see a friend, they're not talking, you notice something's up, like I would definitely recommend, you don't openly have to be like, oh, like, do you have anxiety? Or like, you simply just ask them like, hey, like, how are you doing? Like, how are you? And if, it's a short answer, you can go farther, like, really? Are you sure? But at the end of the day, talking is the number one first step to, really just the rest of your journey, so yeah, talking.
No, that's great. One of the things that we learn in mental health first aid is how to approach, right? And how to create that common that common point that we can have a conversation with somebody. So it's, as Samantha said, you don't need to jump in and say, hey, do you have anxiety? Right? I mean, that's just sort of an odd way to start a conversation, as much as just let them know you're there. How are you doing? If the answer is fine, right? Let's go a little bit deeper. How do you really feel? How do you, how are, trying to get beyond just the fine answer. So, absolutely. I think, continuing to talk about it. And then, speaking of which, I want to switch back over to Karen, and I'm gonna poke at your role as parent this time, because you so beautifully talked about it in the film. And what if your child doesn't want to talk to you, but something's wrong? What can parents do to kind of get beyond that?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, since they say in the film, what did you do differently? Or what did you learn to do differently in parenting? And I think the biggest thing is I learned not to try to fix everything. I was not validating as much. What I learned is that the most helpful thing, and what I've heard from the teens as well, from both a therapist and then the teens that I was interviewing, was, the single most helpful thing as a parent that you can do, not only look at your own anxiety, but is to validate and listen. Validate and listen, validate and listen, instead of trying to fix. And whenever I would try to fix, my son would not want to talk to me. And when I would just listen and validate, it became, then it would build on itself. And sometimes we'd go for a drive and he would just, it was hard to even get him to open up. But even if we didn't talk, he knew I was there. And then after doing a lot of those drives, then he actually would start opening up, as long as I didn't try to fix it. So I think in getting teens to talk, and I know that Katie and Samantha can probably really speak to this, even since you're closer to that, even better than me, but I just really feel that as parents, that we can remember that we don't have to fix everything. We can just be there.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. We held an event in March. It was actually the day before California ordered the shutdown. So it was kind of the last time we had a big in-person event, which I can't wait to do again. But we asked, the kids all went off. I say kids, these were young adults, all went off and sort of had a brainstorm. And one of the big things that came back in big bold letters was, don't fix us. We're not broken. Right. And I think that's a really important thing for us to keep into mind, that, sometimes as parents, we try to be the fixer. Whereas Karen said, just listening can be really powerful. So I want to shift gears a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of chats coming through about resources. Where do I start? How do I begin? Where, I can't find my way through the journey, and we certainly battled this with Zachary, trying to find him the professional help that he needed. It took a long time. So I want to move my way around the panel, and I want to start with our school group here of Jacqueline, Jennifer, and Nicole. And what are schools doing to address anxiety, and what resources are available? Where can families begin? Right. I mean, this is something that will help the parents as well as the kids. And where, how do I start this journey of trying to find resources to help, my kids who are struggling? So I don't know if Jacqueline, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one thing I can speak for Sac City Unified School District that we did as one resource, and this is kind of more of like just helping cope with anxiety overall, but we created a virtual calming room. And I can actually put the link in our chat. But so we did that as a way that, so if you just need to like help manage your anxiety or stress or other strong emotions, there's all these activities, yoga, exercise, music, games, things in this virtual calming room. But in there is also community resources and school resources. So that's one thing our district did. We also have an online student support center where families can go to find the local community resources that are related to Sac City Unified School District, but also within Sac County. And so those are some of the things that we have at our district, in addition to a we don't have a school counselor at every school, but what we have is a district-wide student support center called the Connect Center. And then that serves all of our schools. And then we also have 28 schools that have student support centers where they provide school-based mental health supports. And so those are places that students and families can go for help. But I think something that Jennifer had mentioned about just going to whoever you also trust, especially if you're noticing some of the problems and the functioning as maybe school related, or you're just noticing changes in behaviors in your children, is just seeking help. So going to maybe the teacher to find out who they might know to connect you to find resources, going to your primary care physician, would be other suggestions. And I just think as a parent, and then just reaching out to other parents, or just, I know that was already said, but I can't reiterate enough, just as a parent myself, like always trying to find where are those answers. And so those would be some of the suggestions I would give for broadly for all of us as parents and young people here, but also some specific Sac City Unified services.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, do you want to add anything from your perspective in your district?
Sure. Yeah, we have similar resources with the Calming Center on our website. I think for all districts, probably you can go to some sort of website that might have mental health resources listed on there. I think some other things in our area that people could look into, or even you can just do some research on DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. There are some skills that you can learn. Like one of the things that's mentioned in the angst notes page is like about ice, like holding ice or chewing ice is something that can break like anxiety, panic attacks. So there are different types of skills that parents can get. And then there are places, I know Karen mentioned in the chat, the Child Mind Institute, there's DBT centers, there's the anxiety treatment center that's more intensive. So those are, when I talked about like a range of interventions, that's more, when it's a little bit more difficult of an issue and it's impacting functioning on a higher level, more intensive outpatient stuff. But those resources can all, again, come, like Jacqueline said, from people that you trust too. So your school counselors are going to know about that, your school psychologists, if your student is on an IEP, your special ed case managers will know about some of those resources. So it's really talking to people that you trust and finding out, what exists around you. I know that there are a lot of people on here that maybe aren't in the Sacramento area. So, so what's around you, and what might work for your particular situation.
Great, thank you. And Nicole, for your district?
Agreed. There are resources on the district website, family resource pages, community resource pages, and of course we have school counselors available. We also have wellness providers, other wellness providers. That could be a school psychologist, a school counselor, a social worker, a mental health therapist or specialist. That there's someone at each school that can assist. And the main thing is to reach out, and as the panelists have already said, talking to other parents, talking to educators. Again, the more we talk about it, the more it's like, oh, wow, this is something that a lot of us are experiencing. And while we're in this remote setting, definitely log on to your school website, your district websites. Even the individual schools have counselor corners or mental wellness corners that you can go into and get lots of different resources.
Great. Thank you for that. And that was, it's great to keep in mind. I think, those that aren't in the Sacramento area, I mean, I think the advice the three of you just provided was great to reach out from a school perspective. Now I want to talk to Laura. I haven't forgotten about you, Laura. And I want to talk, so I don't want to ignore the parents and the adults in the audience, right? So we've talked a lot about support for the kids, but as adults, we're going through a lot too, right? And we're, just the journey to help our kids is a path that we need to go through. Laura, can you talk a little bit about resources that adults have available to us?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. There are actually a lot of what the panelist has already mentioned within our local community, but there are national organizations as well. The organization I work for, SMUD, we brought in a speaker today, and they were actually from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And they had great speakers to talk about how you can get involved, how you can get help, whether it's for yourself or you're looking to find ways to volunteer, get involved, and support the mental health issue. But yes, from a personal perspective, it's really hard to reach out because you're going through that yourself. And how and why I introduced myself that way is the people within my inner circle had no idea that I myself was personally experiencing anxiety and depression. And it's hard to try to put on a coat of armor to be the person that people think that you need to be when you're really someone that just feels like they're crumbling inside. And so for me, it was hard to even start to look for help. Where do I begin? Because it was, I think you asked Katie about the shame and the guilt of feeling this way, because I'm considered the warrior. I'm considered the go-getter, the cheerleader. So I can't be weak. And it was hard for me to show that weakness and really succumb to my anxiety and depression. But it wasn't until finding those resources, and again, having the employee assistance program at work really was the start of where I found my resources, and then having support groups within our local areas to reach out to. So there's lots of ways and lots of organizations that's out there to help parents how to cope with personal anxiety and depression, but also how to help with your children that might be expressing some signs and symptoms. But I think the key message that I've heard throughout tonight is just being there and listening. And we talk about active listening. So you talk to your children, you engage, you ask them about their day, but are you really listening to what they're saying? I say that because sometimes we think we're doing the right things, we think we're engaging in conversation, but it's the message of just being there, like what Sam says. How can a parent help is making sure that the child knows that you are there for them no matter what. There's no judgment. And I think that was a comment that was raised over the chat, that for parents, for them to be able to talk to other parents, to other professionals, to not feel judged, so that they're sharing their stories. So NAMI is just one of many organizations, but again, depending on where you're at, there's a lot of local resources available.
That's great. Thank you for that. And Laura mentioned something that I always like to bring up, which is the Employee Assistance Program, EAP. Those of you that have it, it's a great place to turn to. I know that when we lost Zachary and we were trying to find our way, our EAP program really helped us a lot. We set ourselves up with family therapy, set ourselves up with all individual therapy, and it was a great area to kind of tap into. That it's often overlooked, and I had a chance to meet with our person who manages our EAP, and it's an underutilized resource that I think a lot of us can tap into. We tap into our physical health doctor, but here's a chance to tap into our mental health as well, just as important. And then continuing down the resource path, I want to look at Katie and Samantha again. We talked a lot about professional resources, right? So we've talked about therapists and things like that, but there's other resources that we can turn to as well to help in our journey. Do the two of you want to talk a little bit about what some of those resources might be available, to the teens and young adults in the audience that they might turn to? Do you want to start, Samantha?
Yeah, I can start. So I actually had never been to therapy or like anything before my brother passed away. So, going into that was really scary for me and almost like eye-opening at the same time. And I went to a lot of different therapists, and at first it was like I didn't know, kind of like the fit or what type of therapy I like. But over time, actually I learned a lot about the different types, and like you have to kind of like try it out before you kind of find a fit. So I definitely like recommend that. But actually currently right now I'm doing life coaching, which has helped me just personally, kind of I don't know, I guess just like organize my life and stuff. And I have been to, you know, the typical therapist, you know, like talk to them and stuff. And I definitely recommend that as well. But, you know, therapy has definitely just made a huge impact in my life and has helped me in every aspect. So, you know, I definitely recommend just going to like therapy and, you know, seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like, you know, there's different things. And then you know, something that you can literally do right after this is if you go to the ZCares website under our resources, we have a ton of panel talks. We have Sit Down with Sam, Self-Care with Katie. We have a lot of different resources that you can just watch and, you know, like see what other people did, see what they like. So I definitely recommend doing that as well.
Great. Anything to add, Katie?
I think Sam pretty much covered it. I think what's really important to remember is that, you know, some people therapy might intimidate them or they can't afford it. And that's really challenging too. That's like a whole other thing to kind of talk about, and making it like having healthcare, mental health care affordable for people. Because I think Laura touched on the shame of it. But like Sam said, zcares.org has some of the best resources. And talking with a friend, I know we touched on, you know, just asking people if they're okay, but also just saying, hey, I am here for you if you need anything. Like, I am here for you if you want to watch a movie together, if you want to go out and mini golf together. It's sometimes just kind of taking your friend away from whatever environment they're in and doing something different, going on a hike, just a change of pace could really help with things. But Sam pretty much covered it, so.
Great, thank you. Well, our hour is winding up. As I told the panel, it would disappear in a heartbeat, and you know, we're trying to cover a lot here. So let's, as we start to wind down, back to our producer of Angst, Karen. If a school district that's wants to move forward with maybe doing something like we've done here, as we're obviously pushing heavily in the Sacramento area, even though we have an extended audience. If other school districts want to, you know, screen angst, get involved, can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Well, absolutely, and it's super easy to do. So I'd encourage everybody to go to zcares.org, because this is what one of the programs that ZCares does, is show the film and have panels like this that are really specific to your community. IndieFlix really created this film to be shown in community, so that you can find out where you can actually get help and have a discussion like this and actually ask questions and you know, meet people who live right near you. So I would suggest that reaching out to zcares.org to find out more. And you know, these virtual events are really easy to do. I always love the dream rollout, where you can show it to the students at the beginning of the week and then show it to parents at the end, and it helps them have a conversation at home together. That's one. You know, it can be shown in churches, it can be shown in corporations. Often employees will be there, it'll be brought to their employees by their corporation. So there's so many different ways that this can be seen, but I especially really like how ZCares put together the panel, so I really encourage people to reach out. And don't know that every donation as well that goes to ZCares helps bring the film and make it free to people and communities that really, really need it.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you for the ZCares plug. And
was just the truth.
Yes, but we actually just wrapped up a big fundraiser, which we exceeded our goals, which is fantastic. And one of the taglines we pushed on that was free to everyone, everywhere. Money should not be a determining factor and being a part of discussions like this. So it is only through donation that we can make things like that happen and continue down the journey of having these amazing screenings and discussions. When you logged in to view the film, there was some additional resources on your little dashboard. One of those being a home discussion guide. I highly encourage you to use that home discussion guide because the purpose is to open up conversation. It can be a very uncomfortable conversation to talk about mental health. I'm hoping as we progress as a society, it'll get less and less uncomfortable. But right now it is an uncomfortable conversation, and the home discussion guide just kind of does the work for you, right? You can just read through the questions and sort of ease your way into kind of a heavy real conversation, right? It talks about a lot of what you've seen here tonight about listening to one another, and don't listen to respond, but listen to listen, and things like that. And so I highly encourage you to use it. If you didn't get a chance to download it, see it, it's also on our website, so that's available to you at zcares.org as well. So I'm going to move across the panel again, and what I'd like to do is have everybody kind of give their parting shots from a standpoint of what would you like everyone to leave with tonight, both adults and youth that are in the audience, of what is it that you want them to take away. So we'll just kind of move across in the order that it's on my screen. So Nicole?
I would say parting thoughts, reach out and ask for help. It's totally okay. And you do not have to know everything and be perfect. Reach out and let folks know that you need help. And then you'll see that there's a lot of people out there just like you.
Great, thank you. Jacqueline?
I want to steal Michael Phelps' words where he says it's okay not to be okay. And so that always sticks with me. And so I just want to share that with everyone listening, and that, as Nicole said, to reach out for help. But with that, sometimes it's hard to ask for help. So also as our friend and family member, that when we're noticing someone might be struggling, that we reach out to them too. And kind of meet them halfway in getting help. So those would be my final thoughts. And just thank you again for the honor to be here, be part of this amazing panel. It's been quite an honor. So.
Well, thank you. All right, Jennifer.
I think I would just say I liked the part in the movie that talked about we are not defined by our anxiety. A lot of people in the chat and the Q&A talked about stigma. I think there's also stigma with parents talking to each other, like, oh, we can't let people know what's going on in our family. I think the more parents are able to talk to one another and kids are able to open up, the lower stigma will, we won't have that as much anymore. We can just talk about how we're all doing. And yes, like Jacqueline said, doing not well is okay too. Like, things ebb and flow through life, and it can be temporary, and we can get through it. So we don't have to be defined by our anxiety.
Thank you. Laura.
So I want to close, and I promise it will be an upbeat message, even though it's a sad note for me. But the reason why I'm on the panel tonight is I lost my daughter 2.5 years ago, and it's been a struggle for me. And the reason why I share that is because a lot of people who know me would never have imagined what I was going through. My anxiety and depression was hidden so well that even those closest to me had no idea what I was suffering. And it wasn't for lack of support. If anything, I had the world supporting me. I had family, I had friends, and I had a very close group of people who were there on that day, and it changed my life. But again, like I said, the positive message is that mental health should not be looked at as something negative. It is something that should be embraced and talked about. Just like Steve just said, it's not something that we should wait to go to the doctor for. It should be as simple as, if you're not feeling well, you want to go to the doctor right away to find out what's wrong. Mental health should not be any different. And it's that fight to choose to stay under the cover, like Katie says, because I totally can relate. And I so appreciate Katie and sharing their stories, but understand that anxiety and depression does not discriminate, whether you're in an underserved community or an affluent community or from those types of families. It can happen to anyone. And when you think that the person sitting next to you is like, oh, she's fine, she's happy, she's got everything going for her, and the next minute, you realize something so devastating, it's just shocking. And so my challenge and my hope for everyone is to really listen and to really be there and pay attention to what your friends, your children, anyone that's going through it is saying, because they're not going to come right out and say, yes, I have anxiety and depression. It's going to come out in their own ways. So I want to leave this panel and the audience with that there is hope, that you are not alone, no matter who you are. Anyone can be affected by anxiety and depression. It is very real, but it is not something to be afraid of. It is something to be embraced and talked about and shared as often as possible, because it's the only way that we're going to take down the stigma that mental health is a bad thing. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you this discussion, and what a great panel. Thank you so much for letting me be part of it.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very beautiful words, and I couldn't have said it any better myself. Katie.
You want me to follow that?
Yeah, I want you to follow that.
Wow, Laura, that was really, really amazing. And I think also what Jennifer said about parents talking to each other about it. And for me, it was like just not being ashamed of it. And I think that's something that's so huge, is that I have anxiety and I have depression, so I should be ashamed of that because nobody else is talking about it. And so in the Q&As, it's reducing the stigma. It's literally just talking about it, because like Laura said, I believe mental health is more important than physical health, because if you're having a really bad day, you're not going to be able to go to work and be able to be productive and be able to do it well and things like that. And so, gosh, I just love what Laura said about having hope, because that's what I really strive for, is to bring hope and seed hope into people, and to make sure that they know that they're not alone, and that there's always somebody there for them to talk to. Whether or not they know it, there is. I am always there. But yeah, it's a really hard thing to feel like you're alone because nobody else is talking about it. And that's the thing, is that if we all just talk about it, we're reducing the stigma, and that's how we know it's a lot more common than we think it is. And just to have hope. I feel like I can't top what Laura said.
Okay, Samantha.
But Laura, what you said, I definitely can resonate what you said, because if you think about it, like, no one knows, like my mental state right now. You can look at me and I look fine, but I could be completely just devastated inside. And that's something that I would feel like people should understand more. When you are talking to someone, literally anyone, like, you don't know what they're really going through. So I just hope that people are keeping that in mind and, trying to break the stigma. When we talk about it more, that's gonna help, ultimately break the stigma. I remember one panel I said, like, stigma is stupid or whatever, and it was kind of like this trademark thing. But yeah, it's true. Like, stigma is stupid. Like, why are we stigmatizing something that everyone faces time and time again? It's there's no need for it. So, just be open with one another, have conversations, and always keep in mind that you don't know what other people are going through. So
There's a question that was submitted, and I actually just want to read it to you guys word for word, because it's I think it kind of sums up everything. It's a little bit of a long question, but I'm going to read it. It's true that anxiety is treatable, but there's a lot of structural and societal elements that contribute to it. If you treat the anxiety, but everything that's causing it is still there, it's going to come back. How can we create a change in schools and society to encourage others to do so? It's really worded well from a standpoint of, to me, it speaks to the stigma. It speaks to the, yes, we can treat the anxiety, but if as a society we're not adhering to the things that we're talking about here today, we're not there for each other, and if we're not there to support each other, there to listen for each other, it'll continue just to live in the shadows of our society. And I think it's really important that we really do embrace one another. And it's a crazy world out there right now. And what a better time to be there for each other and to let each other know, check in with a friend, check in with your kids, check in with your niece and nephew, and just say, how are you doing? Or I'm thinking of you. What a great opportunity for all of us to really let each other know that we're there. And I think when we reach that point where we can all embrace mental health like we do our physical health, and we talk about it openly, and I think we can just arrive, and events like this really give me hope that we're there, and to see all the people that participated in this and watched the film and wanted to be a part of it, it tells me that we're on the cusp of getting there. You know, so as an organization, ZCares will continue to strive to drive this stigma out and make it okay to have these conversations, because they shouldn't be uncomfortable. They should be just as easy as saying, I sprained my ankle. So, you know, I can't thank everyone enough for being a part of what we've done here tonight. Thank you to all of our sponsors for making it available and getting it out there. I do want to let everybody know we have recorded the event. It's going to be up on the ZCares website in the not too distant future. And I want to thank the 7 of you for joining me this evening. Every one of you, I was excited to have this panel and just knowing what everyone brought to the table, and I couldn't be more impressed with what everyone had to say. I hope the audience, I know we can never get to every question that's asked, and I wish we could spend all evening together. We could go on for hours and hours and hours and have really deep conversations. But you know, I want to just express my gratitude for the 7 of you for joining me this evening. It's humbling that you want to have these conversations, and again, it continues to inspire me to keep going and keep making this happen within communities. You know, I consider you all honorary ZCares members, and hopefully we can stay in touch. And as soon as we can travel and be together, I'd love to take the hour-and-a-half drive up to Sacramento, and let's all have lunch together and chat a little bit more. But and again, thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you for spending time with us this evening. Thank you for watching the film and just being a part of this journey together. We're all in this together, and we can and that's how we get through it, is together. And let's check in on one another. Have a great evening. And as I said, stay safe, stay happy, check in.